Hi guys, my name is Jody and welcome back to Sketchup Skills. Today we're going to be working on the third video in our three-part series on how to model tufted furniture in Sketchup. If you haven't watched these videos already, I definitely recommend that you take a look at them before we move forward with this one, and I'll go ahead and link to those videos in the description below. In our previous videos, we showed you how to create the tufts, the geometry of the tufts, and then how to create edges and corners to replicate the look of a tufted ottoman. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to take our previously created models and use them to create the back of a tufted chair. I'll be explaining how to use multiple extensions to create your curved geometry and then bend our complex tufts to form the back of the chair. Let's go ahead and get started. In this tutorial, we're going to be demonstrating the use of the Flowify extension. You can get Flowify from the extension warehouse. If you come into the extension warehouse and you type in Flowify, it is a free extension. You can go ahead and download and install that. One of the tricky parts about using this extension is, there's actually a couple of tricky parts, but the first and important one is that whatever shape you're bending something along has to have four corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. So no matter what you're doing, you're creating a shape that essentially has four corners. They can be wonky and off center. They don't have to be nice and straight like this, but you need to have a shape that has four corners. This piece has to be in a group. Then you want to be able to check the length of your sides here. So you want to be able to go into your geometry here. You want to select the length of this entire side. So I'm using my Quadface Tools to just select that whole curve, and then you can come into your entity info and you can see what that length is. Here I've got it at 8 foot 9 1/4 inches. So I'm going to be drawing a reference plane that is 8 foot. What did it say? 8 foot 9 1/4 inches tall by 3 foot 11 3/4 inches wide. So 3 foot 11. 3 foot 11 3/4 inches by not 8 foot 9 1/4 inches. 8 foot 9 1/4 inches. Then you want to build this plane out to those dimensions. So basically what you're doing is creating a rectangular shape that has the same length and width, or length and height, as your curved shape. Once you have this plane, you're going to group it, and then you also want to create a connection from this piece, the corner here, to the corner here. They don't have to line up with each other. They just have to have these lines that go directly to from this corner to this corner. And you want to make sure that it's not off, that it's actually touching that corner. And then you're going to select these two groups, or these two lines, and make those a group. And then you have 1, 2, 3 groups, and you're going to group those. So in your outliner, you have a group with 3 groups in them. And this is what you're going to use to force your geometry to bend along that curved piece. So for example, if I'm going to bring in another piece, I'm going to take my geometry here, I'm going to line it up. I want these pieces to be within the confines of our reference plane here. This isn't technically the way that you would scale something, and in fact I think this has been, is this subdivided? Yeah, we want to make sure that it's not subdivided when we do this. So we've got our shape here. We're going to bring it back so that it's sort of flush with our plane. And then we're going to select our geometry, our Flowify group. We're going to go up to Extensions, Flowify, and we're going to choose Flowify without cut. And what that does is it takes our subdivided geometry here and it bends it along that curve. And then once we subdivide it, soften it up, that's what it's going to do. So we're going to use this process to create the chair that we're going to be working on. So here's the chair that we're going to be using for our model, and I'm just looking at the website for it so that we can get some details on it. I'm going to go ahead and take the imagery from this website to use on our model. I've applied the front and side images of the chair that we're going to model to my reference cube, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my drawing toolbar that I have created through the Lord of the Toolbars extension from Fredo 6. On my toolbar here I've got Fredo Spline, which I'm going to use to draw the shape of the back of the chair here. So I'm just going to use this tool to draw the curves following around this back over here and just do some editing of the curve, make sure that it looks the way that I want it to. And then I'm going to draw another curve so that I've got the depth of the cushion kind of represented here. When we're drawing these curves with the Bezier tool, if you look at it, you'll see that where the curve is tighter, you've got more segments, and as the curve gets straighter, it spreads out. We want all of these lines to have the same number of segments, have equal number of segments on them. So we're going to go ahead and use the Bezier spline, or the spline, Fredo Spline tool, and we're going to convert the edges to a polyline segmenter. We want the method to be equalized, and we're going to put these segments at about 24. And what that's going to do is make each of the segments in my curve the same length. We'll see it again here in the larger curve. You'll see here all the segments are the same. On the larger curve, there's more segments in the curve part, so we're going to do the same thing. Fredo Spline, segmenter, equalize, and 24. And so now we've got both of our smaller curves and our larger curves each have 24 segments that are equal to each other throughout the curve. So each of these curves, if you look at the entity info, each segment on the curve is the same length. And then when you look at the smaller curve, if you do the same thing and you look at each of those segments, they're all the same length throughout the entire curve. That's important. We want everything to be as equal as possible when we're using the Flowify tool so that we can make sure we've got geometry that's bending in a uniform way. Now I'm just going to start arranging these curves and duplicating them to create the framework for building the geometry that will be the base for the back of this chair. It's just a matter of duplicating curves and then editing them to follow the shape. Some pieces are going to be scaled up a little bit and scaled out. We're going to use Vertex Tools also to manipulate the individual vertices so we can adjust those a little bit as well. So you can see we're going to come in here with Vertex Tools and we're going to put the soft selection option on and just sort of rearrange these curves a little bit so that they are representing the soft shape of the back of the chair. Once I've got my curves the way that I like them, I'm going to go ahead and use the Cruviloft tool to select each of the curves in sequence and just check it out and see if I like the way that it looks. I do, and what we need to do now is duplicate this so that we've got a reflection of it to the other side. So I've got all of my curves going all along the back of the chair seat. I want to make sure all my curves are welded together so that they're all individual units here without broken geometry. And then again, I'm going to select Cruviloft, and we're just going to go each curve at a time, 1, 2, 3, and so on, all the way across. Go ahead and hit the check mark. And we do have a couple options up here. If we change the segments, you can see that it changes the detail on the chair. What I want is for my segments to sort of be equal in size. So I'm going to go ahead and hide those curves that I made, reverse the faces on this piece, and I've got my geometry that represents the back of the chair. Now this is a group, and we want to go ahead and check the length of the side, which I'm reading at 1 foot 7 1/4 inches. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line for that. So up going on the blue axis, we want 1 foot 7 1/4 inches. And then along the bottom blue edge, I've got a length of 2 foot 4 inches. So I'm going to draw that one as well. And then I'm going to connect this all and create a nice flat plane. Make sure the dimensions are right. And then select this whole unit and turn it into a group. And the last thing that we're going to do for our Flowify procedure is connect the bottom corners of the geometry to the bottom corners of my plane. Select those two lines and group them as well. And this is the process for using the Flowify extension. You need to have each of these 3 elements in a group and all 3 of them grouped together. I'm just going to name it Flowify over here in my outliner so that we've got some organization going on. And then I'm just going to bring in my tufted geometry that I've created. So you're going to follow along with the previous video to build out this piece to the shape that you like. I'm lining it up with my reference cube here, my reference image, so that I can get an idea of the proper size and scale to be starting with for this geometry. So I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit. I'm trying to make it match the photograph as well as I can. And then we want to align this with our Flowify geometry, with that plane from our Flowify group. So I'm going to line this up, pull it all the way back so that it is resting against that plane. And what I want you to notice is the back of the curve of the chair takes up a lot of that geometry. So we don't want these tufts to be up along that back. So we're going to build out this geometry, shrink this part of it down a bit, and then using the move and copy mode in our Vertex Tools, I'm going to extend the geometry up here so that these pieces are going to be both the sides and the top. They are going around the edges and the top of the cushion where the tufts aren't. So we need imagine extra fabric that's going to wrap around those sides that are not part of the tufting. So when we use Flowify, we're going to line up our complicated geometry to this plane here. And then we want to select both the geometry and the Flowify group. Go up to Extensions, Flowify, and select Flowify without cut. What that does is it takes that geometry and it bends it along the curved plane of the back piece. Now you'll see that it actually looks pretty cool, but it's not quite right because we've got tufts that are showing up too high on the back of the piece. So we have to adjust this a little bit. So we're just going to go in here and manipulate our geometry a little bit to try to make that line up properly. I'm going to pull these tufts down, stretch out my geometry at the top here so that it's more aligned with the back of the cushion. I find that this works best when your geometry is as equidistant from the other parts of it as possible. Select Flowify, select both pieces, select Flowify without cut, and see how that worked. It's a little bit better, but it still needs some adjustments, so we still need to pull some of that down. It's a tricky process. You'll have to play around with it a little bit before you get really comfortable on exactly how everything is calculated here. So we're just going to add in a little bit more geometry. Obviously, the more geometry you put into this, the more complicated it is, the heavier your file is going to be. But we need something to force these tufts down a little bit. That's looking better. You'll notice the bottom edge wasn't quite right because we came off of the bottom edge of our placement plane. So I'm just going to pull the rest of that back up again. It's just a little bit of finessing that needs to be done. And let's try one more time. Select the subdivided geometry, select the Flowify group, Flowify without cut, that's looking pretty good. Just pulling these in a little bit here, just a little bit. Flowify again. Nice. Go ahead and subdivide it and see what it looks like. Pretty good. So there you have it. We're going from creating this single piece of geometry to build out our tufts, adding edges and corners, and then using the Flowify extension to bend that geometry along a curved shape. The whole process can be pretty complicated, but once you get the basic pieces of it, I think it makes it a lot easier to then use them in the way that you feel is appropriate for whatever pieces you're trying to model. So I hope that you enjoyed this 3-part video. It definitely was fun for me to show you how to use Sketchup to create those complex, really interesting looking tufted furniture pieces. It is, once you break it down, it's actually not too complicated of a process. It's pretty simple, but you do have to have a little bit of forethought about what you're doing, and you need to try to make sure that you're keeping your geometry nice and clean while you're doing it. If you enjoyed this video, please always hit the like button for me and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And as always, if you have any comments or questions or requests for videos or tutorials that you would like to see, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below or reach out to me and just let me know what it is that you'd like to see next or how you liked this type of tutorial. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.